Hi everybody, it's Bridget. You can go back to sleep. This is video every day in August, day 3. And I thought I would do a video on breastfeeding since it's World Breastfeeding Week. And see a little foot here. That would be Christian's little foot. He's eating. I kind of want to talk about how different breastfeeding is from one baby to another. Some people probably think that it would be the same. I guess since it's the same, even though it's a different baby, that maybe, you know, since you breastfed before, things would be the same with any other baby that you would have. But it's been different with my 5th than with my other 4. And I'll kind of just go through each one of them and tell how long I nursed and how things went with that. My first baby was a boy. His name is Nathan. He's 12 now. I nursed him for a month, about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, because I was a first-time mom, and I read about breastfeeding and things like that, but I didn't really know as much as I do now about it. And basically all I did was read some books. I didn't really talk to too many people that had a lot of experience and stuff with it. And so I would feed him, but I didn't seem to understand or know that to make more milk that the baby would have to keep nursing, and even if they weren't getting much, just keep letting them nurse, and you know, maybe in a day or 2, you know, you would start producing more milk. So what I was doing was supplementing after I would nurse with formula, and it got to the point that he got used to the bottles because he didn't have to work as hard to get the milk. So eventually he just wouldn't even nurse at all and went to formula completely. So I was okay with it and didn't understand, you know, what I was doing wrong or what was going on, why he just didn't want to nurse anymore. So then my next baby was born about 15 months after I had my first, and I was able to nurse her for 8 to 8.5 months, and everything went good with her. I nursed her, and I really didn't want to give her bottles because I was afraid, you know, the same thing would happen if she had a bottle, that she would prefer that over me. So I decided that I was just going to let her, you know, just keep nursing, and I had learned a little bit more by the time I had her about the breastfeeding, because they actually had a lactation consultant in the hospital that I had her at, because it was a different hospital than I had my first at, but that came in and kind of went over things, and it told me, you know, just the more I nursed her, the more milk I would have, and just to let her continue to nurse, even if, you know, I didn't feel like there was any milk there, because it would help, you know, bring in more milk. So I was able to nurse her, like I said, for 8 to 8.5 months. And the reason I quit nursing her is because she started to bite, and I tried all these different things that I read to do if, you know, the babies start biting you, and none of them worked, and she just kept biting, and I would break the latch, and I would, just kind of like wait a couple minutes, and then I would try to nurse her again, and she would just keep biting. She would just keep doing it. So eventually I just had to quit nursing her before I ended up in the emergency room getting stitches to reattach my nipples. And then my third excuse me my third baby was born almost 4 years after my second. And with him, it was really easy. I didn't have any trouble. The only trouble I had was right after he was born. I would try to feed him on the left side when I was in the hospital, and he would just cry and scream and wouldn't even try to latch on, and I didn't know what was wrong. I mean, he was hungry, but he wouldn't latch on. And while I was trying to feed him, because it was the day after he was born, I was trying to feed him, and he just wouldn't latch on, and a nurse walked in. And I told her, he won't latch on, I don't know what's wrong. And she said, well, sometimes babies get sore spots on their heads from, when they're going through the birth canal, they kind of get bruises on their head. And she said sometimes, they won't want to nurse on that side because it's putting pressure where, their head's a little sensitive or bruised. And so she said, try the football hold on that side and see how he does. And as soon as I did that, he grabbed right on and latched and was fine. So everything went good with him, and he nursed till trying to think how long, 2 years, about 2 years, but the reason I quit nursing him is because I was pregnant with number 4, and I was afraid, nursing him, that causing my uterus to contract, that I would have a miscarriage, so that's why I quit nursing him. And so my 4th was born, I think it was like 2.5 years, maybe I only nursed him for 1.5 years, close to 2 years. I'm not exactly sure, because it was since I quit nursing, I was already pregnant and nursing again. But I nursed my 4th baby, my daughter. I nursed her for almost 3 years. She was 2 months shy of 3 years old. And the reason I quit nursing her is because she was down to like just 2 feeds a day, and there was pretty much nothing there, because she got to the point where sometimes she would nurse twice, sometimes once, and she usually wouldn't do like a full feed. It might be 5 minutes on one side, 5 on the other, and she would get up, and so there's pretty much nothing there, and just kind of lost interest. So, and she was fine, she didn't have any trouble with breaking, so everything was easy with her, no trouble. And with all 4 of them, I never had mastitis, I never had clogged ducts, never had milk blisters, never had any trouble. But with number 5, he just turned 13 months, so we're still nursing. He still nurses quite a bit. But with him, I've had, I don't know, 3 or 4 clogged ducts, and it's always been in my right breast. And that's the same side that I always get milk blisters on too. Like now, I had one, but I can't see it anymore, but there's still some pain there, but I don't see anything. So other than that, I have no trouble nursing him. It's just, I keep getting, you know, these milk blisters now. I haven't had clogged ducts for a while. But the milk blisters, it's like skin grows over the holes that the milk comes out and blocks that milk, so the milk can't get out. So you'll get what kind of seems like a clogged duct, but it's just the milk can't get through because there's a piece of skin blocking it from coming out. What was I going to say? Oh, in the beginning, after he was born, he went, I'm trying to think how many hours. He nursed right after he was born. He nursed for 45 minutes. And that was on one side, and then he didn't nurse again. So he was born at 4:20 something, 4 something, I'm pretty sure. And so he nursed for like 45 minutes, and then he didn't nurse again until the next day. It was probably after lunchtime, and it kind of worried me, but the nurses said that's normal. And I noticed the day after he was born, a little bit before like lunchtime and stuff, he started spitting up a lot of like slimy fluid, and I kind of figured it was amniotic fluid. So when he would do it, I would just suction him out. And I kept laying him on the side in case he did that, so he wouldn't choke on it. But the nurse came in, and he did it, and she looked, and she said that's what it was. He had swallowed so much amniotic fluid after he was born that he wasn't wanting to nurse because his belly was full. And now he was getting rid of all that fluid in his belly. But yeah, he didn't nurse as well in the beginning. I mean, it's just like he didn't want to eat, and that worried me, but then he finally picked up. So it took a little bit longer for him to get rid of all the meconium that he had in his body. And he was, he had that black tar for, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe 4 days. It was kind of a long time. I was worried, but I talked to the doctor and she said it was fine. But I mean, I had 4 others and never had any trouble, and then I had him, and you know, it was just so different. So each experience is different, no matter how many babies you've had or how, you know, how much you learn about it. There's always things that can happen, unexpected things. But I've never thought about giving him formula. It never crossed my mind that I would even have to do that, so I just kind of made it like it wasn't an option to do that. And it's not because I think, you know, there's something wrong with formula, that, you know, nobody should give their babies formula, which I think all babies, the best thing for them is breast milk, but you know, everybody's going to make the right decision for themselves and for their baby and their family. And that's just what was right for us and our family, and for what was right for him. And you just kind of work through those things, and you'll get through them eventually. I mean, you're always going to get through it. It might seem like never, you know, like it's never gonna, problems are never gonna be over, or, you know, you just gotta think, you know, you just gotta be calm, especially if, you know, you're trying to nurse and the baby's not wanting to nurse, or you're having, you know, trouble with the latch. If you get tensed up, then the babies are gonna, you know, they're gonna be able to sense that, and that's going to make it worse. But each one's different, and you just gotta do what you can. And there's so much information on the internet. There's actually a Facebook page called, Respect the Breast, and I love that page. It's ran by I'm trying to think how many women. I think 3 or 4, there might be more. But I mean, you can email them questions, and they will post the question and not put your name on it. Just post a question, and there's so many women out there that will like share their experiences and things that they learned, and there's like lactation consultants that that will reply on there, and it's pretty neat because I never knew what a milk blister was. Even after I got a couple of them, I didn't know what they were, and then saw that people were talking about them, just found out what they were. So that's how I found out what those were. Oh, I'm running out of time now, so I better cut this off. But if you guys have any questions for me, you can just leave it in a comment box, and I'll get back with you. So we'll be breastfeeding till he decides he doesn't want to anymore, unless something else comes up. But I will talk to you guys tomorrow for day number 4. Bye.